Get out!
Revenge Files with Nora. File 6. Sarah. When the CEO fired me, he looked satisfied. Almost relieved. Like he'd finally gotten rid of an obstacle he'd been dancing around for months. He called me a relic of the old leadership. Said I lack the vision to move forward with the company's new direction. Said the board needed people who could lead, not just manage spreadsheets and operations. What Mitchell Crane didn't know was that my father had left me 90% of the company's voting shares in a trust. A trust that activated the moment I turned 35. He thought he was removing an obstacle. Instead, he handed me the keys to his own termination. The board meeting where I walked in as majority shareholder lasted exactly 11 minutes. That was the shortest CEO tenure in Grayson Industries history. Mitchell's face when he realized what was happening, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a man who thought he was untouchable learned the hard way that documentation, patience, and proper channels always win in the end. Here's what happened. I'd been with Grayson Industries for 12 years, joined right out of business school, worked my way up from analyst to VP of operations. The kind of trajectory that should have put me on the executive track. My father founded the company back when I was still in elementary school, built it from a small manufacturing operation into a regional powerhouse. By the time I graduated college, Grayson Industries had expanded into logistics, tech integration, and supply chain management. Revenue was north of $400 million annually. Dad was the kind of leader who knew everyone's name. He'd walk the factory floor on Fridays, shake hands with the line workers, ask about their families. Sometimes I'd tag along, and I grew up familiar with those scenes. He believed that companies were only as strong as the people who built them. That philosophy made Grayson Industries what it was. When he passed away 6 years ago, everything changed. The board brought in outside leadership, someone who represented the exact opposite of my father's work philosophy. Mitchell Crane came from a competitor with an MBA from Kellogg and a reputation for aggressive restructuring. The board loved his confidence, his vision, his ability to command a room. What they didn't see was how he commanded it, by dismissing anyone who disagreed, by surrounding himself with yes-men, by systematically pushing out the people who remembered how the company used to operate. I watched it happen over the years. Watched male colleagues rise faster despite delivering less. I watched Jason Chen get promoted to senior VP after just 2 years. I'd been there 8. His department's numbers were half of mine. Watched declining employee satisfaction scores get buried in reports that never reached the board. Watched my ideas get dismissed in meetings, only to resurface weeks later as someone else's innovation. The whole process had become agonizing. The culture my father built eroded piece by piece. Friday floor walks disappeared. The annual family picnic got canceled. The unhappiness of the employees had become almost tangible. The employee development fund got redirected to executive bonuses. Excessive executive bonuses, actually. I saw the numbers. Mitchell's compensation package had tripled in 3 years while entry-level wages stayed flat. I filed formal complaints with HR, 3 of them over 4 years. Each one documented specific incidents: discrimination in promotion decisions, credit theft, hostile work environment. I followed the proper channels. Just like I'd been taught, HR ignored it all. They didn't reject it, they ignored it. They filed it away in folders that would never be opened. Because to reject something, you first have to acknowledge that the problem exists. I followed up and they told me they were working on it. Months passed. Nothing happened. No investigation was ever conducted. The official complaint was left on the shelf and gathered dust. I learned something important during those years. Patience isn't passive. It's strategic. Every complaint I filed, I kept a copy in Notion. Every meeting where my contributions were dismissed, I documented with timestamps and screenshots. Every time Mitchell talked over me or assigned my projects to someone else, I noted the date, the context, the witnesses. My attorney, Mr. Callahan, had been my father's lawyer for decades. He knew about the trust, knew what was coming. He'd advised me to wait to build my case to let Mitchell dig his own grave. So I did. I waited. I documented. I watched. My father had always told me something. Wait until the time was right. I never fully understood what he meant until the morning of my 35th birthday. That morning began as usual. I drank coffee in my Brooklyn Heights apartment, took the subway to Midtown, and made my usual walk through the lobby of Grayson Industries, with its marble floors and corporate portraits. My father's face still hung in the corridor next to the executive offices, a reminder of what the company used to be like. Anyway, seeing his face every morning as I walked in made me feel good, especially on the morning of my 35th birthday. My best friend Mia had texted at 7 a.m., "Happy birthday. Dinner tonight? We're celebrating whether you like it or not." I'd smiled at that. Mia and I had been close since college. She was one of the few people who understood what the last 6 years had been like. The frustration, the dismissals, the slow erosion of everything I'd worked for. I had a meeting with Mitchell scheduled for 9 a.m., routine quarterly review. I'd prepared the operations report, the efficiency metrics, the projections for next quarter. My department had delivered the highest revenue growth in 3 years, numbers that should have spoken for themselves. What I didn't expect was what was waiting for me when I arrived. Mitchell's assistant stopped me in the hallway. He said, "He wants to see you in the conference room instead." Something about the meeting location change. I nodded and redirected. Conference room C, the one with the mahogany table and the view of 6th Avenue, the one they used for important announcements. When I walked in, Mitchell wasn't alone. Craig Thornton, the CFO, sat beside him. So did Rebecca Mills from HR, 3 people. No files on the table. No laptops open. No agenda printed. I knew immediately. This wasn't a quarterly review. Something was about to change fundamentally. Mitchell gestured to a chair across from him. "Sarah, sit down, we need to talk." I sat, kept my face neutral. 12 years of corporate survival had taught me that much. Maybe you know what I mean. Mitchell folded his hands on the table. "The board has decided to restructure the leadership team. We're moving in a different direction. And frankly, we need people who can lead, not just follow spreadsheets." I let the words land, didn't react. Just watched his face, searching for any hint of hesitation. There was none, like a robot, and he was enjoying this. I said, "You're letting me go, not a question." He smiled. "We're releasing you from your position, effective immediately." The kind of smile that said he'd been waiting for this moment. "HR has your severance details. We'll need your badge and laptop by end of day." I nodded slowly. "May I ask why?" "My performance reviews have been excellent. My department delivered record growth this quarter." Mitchell's expression suddenly turned serious. "Maybe no one's told you this before, Sarah, but unfortunately you lack vision. You're weak when it comes to managing people, and this industry definitely demands strong leadership, along with determination and confidence. Unfortunately, those qualities haven't quite developed in you, and let's be honest, our biggest clients expect a certain presence at the table. A man's presence. That's just how this industry works." There it was, not even subtle. A dig at my gender wrapped in corporate jargon. He didn't see me as a leader because I didn't fit his mold. Loud, aggressive, male. I said, "I understand," my voice steady. Neutral. Mitchell blinked. He'd expected outrage. Maybe tears. Something he could use to justify the decision, to prove I was too emotional for leadership. I didn't give him that satisfaction. Yet the blood coursing through my veins was practically boiling. I stood and extended my hand. "Thank you for the clarity, Mitchell. I appreciate it." He hesitated, then shook my hand. His grip was too firm. "Compensating?" He said, "Good luck out there." I smiled politely and walked out of the conference room, past the watching eyes, past the whispered questions, past my father's portrait in the hallway. I didn't look back. I packed my desk in silence. Laptop, badge, a coffee mug my team had given me the previous Christmas, a framed photo of my father and me at the company's 20th anniversary celebration. Coworkers glanced my way, but no one approached. Some looked sympathetic. Others avoided eye contact entirely. The office gossip machine was already churning. Did she get fired? What did she do? I didn't owe them explanations. Not yet. Security escorted me to the lobby. They said, "Standard procedure, nothing personal." I nodded, tucked my box under my arm, and walked out into the October afternoon. The city buzzed around me. Midtown traffic, food carts, the endless rhythm of Manhattan in motion. None of it touched me. I felt strangely light, almost relieved. Because what Mitchell didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for years. The trust had activated on my birthday. 90% of Grayson Industries' voting shares, held quietly for years, were now legally mine. Full voting rights activated immediately. No public filings required until I chose to act. My father had planned this, had anticipated that someone might try to push me out, had given me the power to push back. I reached for my phone and texted Mr. Callahan, "It's time. Prepare everything." His reply came within seconds. He wrote, "Understood. Shareholder meeting can be scheduled within 3 business days. Ready when you are." I looked back at the Grayson Industries building, its glass facade catching the afternoon light. Mitchell was probably up there right now, celebrating his little victory. Thinking he'd eliminated a problem, he had no idea what was coming. That evening, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the documentation I'd collected over 4 years. Complaint forms, meeting notes, email printouts, performance reviews, a paper trail that told the story of systematic dismissal and institutional failure. Mia had canceled dinner when I explained what happened. Instead, she brought Thai food and a bottle of wine. I said flatly, "Happy birthday" to me, pouring us both a glass. Mia studied my face. "You're not upset." I replied, "I'm just trying to be strategic. I have to be, at least until I get the situation under control." She raised an eyebrow. "What aren't you telling me?" I told her, "about the trust, the shares, the voting rights." Her eyes went wide. "You're saying you own the company, basically?" 90%, I nodded. "My father set it up years ago. It activated when I turned 35. She said, "And Mitchell just fired you." "He did." Mia started laughing, the kind of laugh that builds from disbelief into something approaching joy. "Oh my God, Sarah, he has no idea." I said, "None whatsoever." She clinked her glass against mine. "To your father, absolute legend." I smiled for the first time that day, absolute legend. I felt deeply how much I missed him. The next morning, I met with Mr. Callahan at his office in Midtown, the same office where my father had planned his estate, where the trust documents had been signed and sealed years before anyone anticipated they'd be needed. Callahan said, sliding a folder across his desk, "The paperwork is ready. We can file notice of a special shareholder meeting with one agenda item: executive leadership review and potential restructuring." I asked, "How long until the meeting?" 3 business days. "The board will receive notice tomorrow." I looked at the documents. Legal. Official. Undeniable. Mitchell had fired me through proper channels. I would remove him the same way. Justice through official channels. Accountability through documentation. But there was more. Callahan slid a second folder across the desk, a black folder. "I also recommend we file a formal complaint with the EEOC, gender discrimination, wrongful termination, hostile work environment. You have 4 years of documentation, 3 ignored HR complaints, and his exact words from the termination meeting." I nodded. "File it." He made some notes. "The EEOC investigation alone could take months, but it's worth it. The filing itself sends a message, and if they find cause, we can pursue a civil lawsuit for damages." I asked, "How much are we talking?" "Based on your tenure, salary, and the documented pattern of discrimination, it could be $2 to $3 million, plus attorney fees." I let that sink in. Mitchell had fired me thinking I'd disappear quietly. Instead, he triggered a legal process that would follow him for years. Callahan continued, "There's something else. Your father left instructions. He wanted you to have this on the day you decided to act. He handed me an envelope, yellowed with age, my father's handwriting on the front, for Sarah, when she's ready." I opened it with careful hands. The letter inside was dated 7 years ago, before his diagnosis, before anyone knew time was running out. It began, "Sarah, if you're reading this, you've decided to take what's rightfully yours. I always knew you would." I kept reading, my eyes blurring. "You've spent your life working twice as hard for half the recognition. I'm not saying this because I'm your father. I've had enough professional experience to see this objectively. I saw your sacrifices, the integrity, the patience. I also saw how the company would change after I left. I knew someone might try to take it from you, so I made sure they couldn't. The shares aren't just power. They're protection. Use them wisely, use them fairly, but use them. I love you. I'm proud of you. Now go show them what real leadership looks like." I set the letter down. Callahan pretended not to notice my tears. I said, "File the notice. The meeting happens Thursday." He nodded. "Done." Mitchell Crane thought he'd removed an obstacle. In 3 days, he'd learn he'd created one. And unlike him, I had the documentation to prove every claim I was about to make. Have you ever been in a situation that required this kind of preparation? Wednesday passed in quiet preparation. I reviewed financial reports that Callahan had obtained through legal channels. What I found confirmed everything I'd suspected. Under Mitchell's leadership, Grayson Industries had been bleeding. Employee satisfaction had dropped 42% in 3 years. Turnover in key departments was up 58%. Multiple discrimination complaints sat unresolved in HR files, including mine, and the finances, worse than the board knew. Revenue looked stable on paper, but margins were shrinking. Mitchell had been cutting corners, deferring maintenance, squeezing suppliers. Short-term gains masking long-term damage. The excessive executive bonuses I'd noticed. They'd increased by 340% while the company's actual performance declined. Mitchell and his inner circle were enriching themselves while the foundation crumbled. I compiled everything into a presentation. Clean, professional, devastating. The board members would see exactly what had happened under their watch, and they would have to answer for it. That night, I stood in front of my mirror, trying on a charcoal blazer I'd bought years ago for occasions that never materialized. It fit perfectly. Sharp, commanding, the kind of outfit you wear when you walk into a room not to ask for power, but to claim it. I practiced what I'd say, not a speech. Just a few lines, precise and measured. The evidence would do most of the work. Thursday morning arrived crisp and bright. I took the subway into Midtown, same route I'd traveled for 12 years. Same crowds, same stations, same rhythm, but everything was different now. I arrived at Grayson Industries 10 minutes early. The receptionist did a double take when she saw me but said nothing. I smiled politely and headed for the elevator. Mr. Callahan met me on the executive floor. His expression was calm but alert. He said, "They are assembled. Mitchell started the meeting 5 minutes ago. He thinks this is a routine quarterly strategy session." I replied, "It won't be routine for long." I took a breath, steadied myself, felt my father's letter folded in my jacket pocket, then pushed open the boardroom doors. Every head turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Mitchell's face went from confusion to irritation in half a second. He said, "Sarah, this meeting is for board members only." I smiled and set my documents on the table. Exactly. Then I took my seat at the head of the table. Then there was complete silence. Mitchell looked at me intently, his expression shifting from surprise to anger, then to concern. The board members looked at each other uncertainly. Mr. Warren, who had been on the board since my father's time, leaned forward with an appreciative look in his eyes. I reached into my folder and pulled out the ownership certificates. 90% of voting shares, full documentation, every right exercised through proper legal channels, but what came next would change everything. I said calmly, "I'm not here as an employee, I'm here as the majority shareholder." That last sentence seemed to echo through the room. The entire energy of the room suddenly changed completely. Board members stiffened. Mitchell's face went pale. Mr. Warren, who had known my father for decades, looked down at the ownership certificate I'd placed before him. He adjusted his glasses, studied the document, then looked back at me. He asked, "Is this accurate?" "It is. 90% of the company's voting shares were transferred to me through a family trust when I turned 35. All paperwork is in order, filed, notarized, and submitted in accordance with corporate governance." Mitchell stood abruptly. "This is absurd. You can't just walk in here and claim to own the company." I replied, "I didn't claim anything. The trust documents speak for themselves. Mr. Callahan has verified everything with corporate counsel." Mitchell looked at Callahan, who nodded once. "The documents are legitimate. The shares were held in trust by the late founder for his daughter. Full voting rights activated on her 35th birthday. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Board members began flipping through the pages I'd distributed. Some looked disturbed, others looked relieved. Mr. Warren cleared his throat. "In accordance with company bylaws, Miss Matthews, as majority shareholder, has the right to call a special meeting and propose agenda items." I said, "Thank you, Mr. Warren." I pulled out the second folder. "As majority shareholder, I'm calling for an immediate review of executive leadership and company performance under the current CEO." Mitchell's face flushed red. "This is a coup, a personal vendetta. You think you can just," I said, my voice cutting through his objection. "I'm not asking. I'm exercising my rights, and I have documentation to support every concern I'm about to raise." I slid the financial report onto the table. Employee satisfaction has decreased by 42% over the past 3 years. Staff turnover has increased by 58%. There are 3 unresolved discrimination complaints. Despite market growth, profit margins are declining, and while the company's actual performance is deteriorating, management salaries have increased by 340%. I paused. You should also know that I've filed a formal complaint with the EEOC, gender discrimination, wrongful termination, hostile work environment. The investigation has already begun. Mitchell froze and the color drained from his face. This is nonsense. You can't prove any of it. I replied, I can. I have 4 years of documentation, 3 ignored HR complaints, and witnesses who will testify to the pattern of discrimination in this company. The room went very quiet. Board members exchanged nervous glances. An EEOC investigation meant federal scrutiny, potential lawsuits, public exposure, major reputational damage. Board members began reading. The CFO, Craig Thornton, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He knew his name was on those bonus approvals. Mr. Warren looked genuinely disturbed as he reviewed the numbers. He said slowly, Mitchell, these figures don't match the reports we've been receiving. Mitchell scrambled. Those numbers are out of context. She's twisting data to make her case. I replied, I don't need to twist anything. I have evidence, audit trails, email records, complaint documentation. You relied on the assumption that no one powerful enough would ever question you. That assumption ends today. I let that hang in the air. I continued, effective immediately. I am submitting a motion to remove Mitchell Crane as CEO of this company. As majority shareholder, my vote is sufficient to carry the motion. The board secretary looked stunned. You don't need a second vote? I own 90%, a majority by any definition. Mr. Warren nodded slowly. In accordance with company bylaws, the motion stands, effective upon completion of documentation. Mitchell slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this. His aggression was proof of his desperation. Does this behavior seem familiar to you? I said, I already did. He looked around the room, searching for allies. No one looked at him. Craig Thornton was staring at the table. Rebecca Mills from Human Resources pretended to take notes. The other board members were reviewing documents. Mitchell Crane had been intimidating people for years to gain power. But intimidation only works if you're the most powerful person in the room. He wasn't anymore. Security didn't need to be called. Mitchell left on his own, his face a twisted mask of rage and disbelief. As he passed my chair, he paused. He said quietly, this isn't over. I looked up at him. For you, it is. The door closed behind him, the room exhaled. Mr. Warren was the first to speak. Well, that was overdue. I smiled despite myself. It was. The board secretary began taking formal notes, her voice still slightly shaky. For the record, the motion to remove Mitchell Crane as CEO has been carried by majority shareholder vote, effective immediately. I nodded. Thank you. Now let's discuss what comes next. I was so ready for this moment. Plans that had been waiting in my head for years. The rest of the meeting lasted about 40 more minutes. I outlined the transition plan I had prepared, proposed interim leadership, and committed to a full audit of company practices. Every department would be reviewed, every complaint would be reopened, every financial record would be examined. These were my proposals. In addition to these, I proposed something else. A new position, Chief People Officer. Their job would be to ensure that what happened under Mitchell's leadership would never happen again. Proper channels for complaints, real investigations, and real accountability. They listened carefully and with interest. The board agreed unanimously. As the meeting concluded, I asked Craig Thornton to stay behind, the CFO who had approved all those excessive bonuses and signed off on the misleading reports. He was clearly nervous, as he should be. I said calmly once the others had left, Craig, I'm going to give you a choice. You can resign quietly with a standard severance package, or you can stay and face the full audit, which will include a detailed review of every financial decision you've approved over the past 3 years. He was pale. His hands trembled slightly. He said, I'll have my resignation on your desk by end of day. I knew he couldn't risk it. I nodded. That's what I thought. When we adjourned fully, Mr. Warren pulled me aside in the hallway. He put a hand on my shoulder. Your father would be proud. He used to say you were the most capable person he'd ever met. Said you'd run this company better than he ever did. I didn't bother hiding that my eyes were watering. I said, I hope I prove him right. That evening, I sat in my apartment with Mia, a bottle of champagne between us. She said, shaking her head in disbelief, "So you just walked in and fired the CEO?" I replied, "Technically, I exercised my voting rights as majority shareholder to remove an executive whose performance failed to meet company standards." Mia laughed. "Same thing, but fancier." I smiled. "Documentation makes everything fancier." She raised her glass. "To your dad, and to you, for finishing what he started." We clinked glasses. The champagne was cold and perfect. By the end of the week, Mitchell's nameplate had been removed from the CEO office door. Craig Thornton's resignation was accepted without fanfare. Rebecca Mills from HR was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I didn't move into the CEO office immediately. There was too much work to do first. The Monday after the shareholders' meeting, I gathered all employees in the main conference hall. The same hall where Mitchell had once paraded around giving empty praise to his favorites. The energy in the room was different now, a little tense and curious, hopeful too, I hoped for most. I stood at the front of the room alone, no slides, no notes, just truth. I began, some of you know me, some of you only know what you've been told, but let me start with this. I didn't come here to take power. I came here to restore accountability. I looked across the room, meeting eyes with people I'd worked alongside for years. I continued, I was fired last week, told I wasn't what this company needed, that I lacked the leadership qualities to take us forward, told I managed tasks, not people, told I wasn't confident enough, assertive enough, vision-oriented enough. A few uncomfortable glances. What the person who fired me didn't understand is that leadership isn't about volume or vanity. It's about vision and respect and lifting the people who actually do the work. I paused. Every complaint that was ignored is now being re-examined. Every policy that disappointed employees is being re-evaluated. Every person who was overlooked for the wrong reasons is being reconsidered. Documentation, accountability, fairness. These are the new priorities. Over the next month, I just listened to everyone. I met one by one with interns, department heads, team leads, everyone who had a stake in this company's existence and its future. I asked where things went wrong, what they needed, and who had been overlooked. Then I acted. I promoted Olivia from the analytics team to head of operations. She'd been doing the job unofficially for 2 years while her former manager took credit for her work. Now she had the title and salary to match. When I told her about the promotion, she cried, not from sadness, from relief. She said, "I've been waiting 3 years for someone to notice. I filed 2 formal complaints about credit theft. Nothing ever happened." I said, "I know, I read those complaints. They're part of why I'm here." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time in this building. Hope. I restructured HR entirely, brought in an outside consultant to audit every process. The complaints that had gathered dust in forgotten folders, I read every single one, documented patterns, identified repeat offenders. Several mid-level managers were let go within the first month. People who had cultivated cultures of fear and favoritism under Mitchell's watch. People who had ignored complaints, buried evidence, protected their friends at the expense of their teams. Each termination followed proper channels, documentation, evidence, due process. The same systems that had failed employees for years now worked in their favor. I reinstated the Employee Development Fund, tripled its budget, made it accessible to everyone, not just the executives' favorites. I brought back the Friday floor walks my father had started. Every week, I walked through different departments, talked to people, asked questions, listened. Not because it was good optics, because it mattered. I created new channels for feedback that didn't require going through layers of bureaucracy. Anonymous reporting systems, regular town halls, an open-door policy that was actually open. Making changes took time and didn't happen overnight, of course. Breaking some patterns was really difficult, but within 3 months, people started noticing that things had changed. There were human reactions, not robotic ones. There was laughter in the break room. Desks were decorated again with family photos, plants, and personal items. People were working out of purpose and enjoyment, not under pressure and fear. 6 months after the shareholders' meeting, Grayson Industries had its strongest quarter in 5 years. Revenue up 23%, employee satisfaction up 41%, client retention at an all-time high. We also won back 2 major contracts that had been slipping under Mitchell's leadership. Zenith Logistics renewed their partnership for another 5 years. Cobalt Technologies expanded their agreement by 40%. When I asked the Zenith CEO why they decided to stay, he said something that stuck with me. He said, "We work with companies that treat their people well. Under the old leadership, we had concerns. Under you, we don't." That meant more than any revenue figure. The board formally appointed me as CEO 3 months after Mitchell's removal. The vote was unanimous. Mr. Warren made the motion himself. When I finally moved into the CEO office, I brought only a few personal items. My father's photo, the letter he'd written me, a small glass ornament Olivia had given me as a thank you gift. I kept the broad windows overlooking the city, changed the artwork on the walls to photos of our teams, our product launches, our community initiatives. Added a small plaque near the door with my father's favorite saying, "Companies are only as strong as the people who build them." My brother Daniel flew in from Chicago for the official CEO announcement. First time he'd been to the Grayson Industries headquarters in years. He said, looking around the lobby, "What you've accomplished here is extraordinary." Dad would have cried. Happy tears. I said, "I know, I cried enough for both of us." As for Mitchell Crane, the EEOC investigation concluded 4 months after his termination. They found reasonable cause to believe discrimination had occurred. Rather than face a public trial and the discovery process that would expose every email, every meeting note, every ignored complaint, Mitchell's attorneys reached out to settle. $2.8 million, plus a clawback of 18 months of executive bonuses that the board determined were improperly awarded. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement, but here's what I can tell you. He took a consulting role at a small firm in another state, a significant step down from CEO of a $400 million company, no corner office, no executive bonus, no board to intimidate. I didn't feel triumphant about his fall. I didn't need to. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. He made choices, ignored complaints, buried evidence, enriched himself while the company struggled, dismissed qualified people because they didn't fit his narrow definition of leadership. He faced consequences, lost his position, lost his reputation, lost the power he'd spent years accumulating. That was enough. If you're watching this and you've ever filed a complaint that went nowhere, if you've ever been dismissed by someone who didn't bother to understand your value, if you've ever waited and documented and wondered if it would ever matter, know this: patience isn't passive. It's strategic. Documentation isn't paranoia. It's protection. And using proper channels isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The systems designed to hold people accountable only work if we use them. The EEOC exists for a reason. Wrongful termination laws exist for a reason. Labor boards and federal regulators exist for a reason. And when we use them with evidence, with persistence, with clear documentation, they work. Remember that. My name is Sarah Matthews. I'm the CEO of Grayson Industries, the daughter of the man who built it, and the person who restored what he created. Confidence isn't volume. Leadership isn't ego. And accountability isn't optional. If someone has underestimated you, wait, document, prepare. And when the time is right, walk into that room and show them exactly who they dismissed, not with anger, with evidence. Do you agree? Share your thoughts in the comments. The full yellow file playlist's waiting, or discover other color files for more office revenge. See you in the next file.